What's up, guys? I got some of these 135 grain cutting edge Raptors loaded up for my 7 Rem Mag. I'm going to go to the range today, do a little load development, and I'm only doing 2 shots of each gunpowder charge. I'm going to shoot some gel, so I got to figure out which gunpowder charge do I want to load an extra bullet for to shoot the gel, because I'd want to do the max charge, but if I run into pressure, now I'm going to have to shoot an extra bullet at high pressure to shoot the gel. So I might go middle of the road. Now these are 135 grain. I've shot the 140 grain makers, so they're very close, 5 grain difference, and they're both monolithics. So with the makers, if you look at the 2 bullets here, the makers I worked up to 73 grains of Rand Shot Magnum, and I loaded 20 of those for hunting season, and the first 10 were fine. Then all of a sudden, when I was just shooting and doing my last gel test, I started to get a little bit hard extraction, so I was running to pressure. So I think I'm going to back off a little bit. But looking at the bullets here, if you look at the Copper Raptor on the left here, it has much bigger relief grooves. You know, the ones on the 140 maker, they're almost just like baby little slits. They're not really grooves. So I think I'll have less pressure with the Raptor. Another thing I'm curious about is they say I need a 1 in 9.25 twist rate for this Raptor when I have a 9.5 twist rate. But I don't think that takes into account the plastic tip, because if you go on certain websites, I know like the Burger, website, if you're looking at their twist rate calculator, they just ask, bullet weight and the length and stuff, but they don't ask about the plastic tip, which is going to change that measurement, because the plastic tip adds length, but it does not really add weight. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully they shoot good and I get a good shot in the gel block. So I just took some shots of those 135 grain Raptors. Just grabbed the target. So this is the first group with 71.5 grains. Pretty nice and close. Now, I know it's only 2 shots. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but that's nice. I adjusted up for this next group. Now this opened up a little bit, but that could easily just be me. And then I adjusted to the left for this last group, 72.5 grains, and we got 2 in the same hole. Now I have 1 more bullet of the 72.5 loaded up. So since they're pretty much on point, hitting the gel should be a piece of cake. So I'm going to get that set up, and we're going to see what they do in the gel. Alright guys, so I got a good hit on the gel. I haven't chronographed these yet, but they should be in between 3,100 to 3,200 feet per second. Nice hit. You can see the black tip there with the petals breaking off. Now, these petals don't seem to go as far as the brass Raptors, but that base left a huge permanent wound channel through this block. I mean, that's the shot from the 140 grain maker at 350 yards, so it's certainly bigger than that. The petals, they must be smaller. Now, unfortunately, the base zipped out the top here of the second block. I mean, for reference, it's hard to tell, but this wound channel in here was a 100 grain brass Raptor from the 308, and you can see how far these petals broke off. So unfortunately, that base zipped out the top. I'm going to search around the dirt right here and see if I can find it, but chances are I probably will not. But pretty impressive. Not bad at all. Alright guys, so I've got these gel blocks home to do a quick analysis. So you can see the bullet came in this direction. It opened up, I mean, pretty much immediately. That might be an inch neck. Petals came in. They only went about 4 inches. When I flip the block over, I'll show you. There's one that went a touch further. And then we tracked through. Bullet ended up exiting out of the block here at about 28 inches, which is great penetration. It sucks I could not find the base. Even though there's not much to look at, there's no expansion to measure or anything, but it's nice to see the weight retention. But you can see there's a wound channel in here, which is from the 100 grain Raptor out of my 308. If you can see these petals, they broke off. They went about 6 inches in, and they went the entire width of this block, which is way different than this Raptor. So the Copper Raptor, the petals they're either smaller or just however they break off, they don't seem to penetrate as far. But this permanent wound channel from just the base, I mean, that's huge. That held a big wound channel all the way through 16 inches and a little bit further. It's hard to tell because it's on top of another wound channel in here. But it certainly did not taper off that quickly. So if we look here, so we got pretty much just an inch and a quarter wound channel. Almost an inch and a half through that whole 16 inches. And the petals only went about 3 inches off of, 3 inches wide, so 1.5 inches to either side of the main wound tract, which is not as big as the brass wound channel. These brass ones, I believe, spread out about 5 or 6 inches. Now the brass, since brass is very hard, we got about 5-inch spread here. The brass is very hard, so they're more like blades, where I think the copper would be more like petals. Now, if I flip this over, it's hard to tell because this side of the block is not clear at all, but there is a petal here that went a little bit further, but there's also one that's right here. It's like it just broke off and went nowhere, so definitely kind of funky. From all the testing I've done with the brass ones, they don't do that. They all just go out the same, direction. They go the same distance, so they seem to be a little bit more consistent, but this is just one test, so I'm going to try to stretch these out a little bit further and see how they perform, 200-300 yards. Alright guys, so my final thoughts on these bullets are, I don't think the Copper Raptor performed as good as the Brass Raptor. Now this is the most powerful cartridge I've shot these Raptors out of, being the 7 Rem Mag. I've tested the brass versions in 308 and 68 SPC. Those are both light, 85 grain and 100 grain, so now we're stepping up to 135, and I kind of expected a little bit better performance. Now, copper is obviously softer than brass, so the brass one, it seems like all the petals just shear off at one point, a little bit deeper in, and they stay as blades, not really petals, where the copper seems to be a little bit more peeled like a petal would. Most of them went the same distance, but not as much, so there seems to be less of an explosive energy transfer when those petals break off, and this is evident by the fact that the petals didn't go as far. So the more energy that those petals take with them, the further they're going to travel into the gel. So you see that the brass ones went they went deeper and wider. So one thing I always mention is the gel is not an animal, so yes, bones and are a lot denser than the gel, but the gel itself is a lot denser than vital organs. So when you get into an animal's chest cavity, you have spaces in between the organs, and then like the lungs are full of air, heart's full of liquid, so you're going to get more penetration in the vitals than you would in the actual gel. The gel is super tough. I mean, if you try to stab it, your knife will barely go into it. Yes, it's not bone. And my main concern with these types of bullets is what happens if you hit heavy bone. So I have shot them, through deer shoulders, not into gel, but just to show you guys the effect, and they seem to work good. But this year I was able to take a high shoulder shot on a big old doe. She field dressed at 150 pounds, and I found petals in the offside shoulder, so it went through the front shoulder, right through the shoulder blade, went through the spine, and then the petals ended up stopping in the rear shoulder. So the petals definitely penetrated well. The lungs were all torn up, so I don't know if a couple of petals went down along with some bone fragments, but the vitals, it wasn't just a spine shot, it destroyed the lungs too. So very effective. The coyote I shot with the 6.8 SPC, I pulled that shot and shot it right in the ass. It was a broadside hit in the butt, so there's petals coming up out of the spine, going down out of the leg, just destroyed the pelvis. Thing dropped, tried to drag itself maybe for 5 seconds, and then bled out. So the brass versions have seemed very effective. Will the copper versions be just as good? It's hard to say. But one thing is, with the less energy transfer coming off of the petals, the base holds more velocity, so the base is doing more damage. With the brass ones, it seems like you have a massive energy dump, and then the base will have a good wound channel for about 6 inches before it tapers off, and it's just caliber size. Where the copper version that we just tested, the base, it held that big wound channel through all 16 inches of the gel, and then a little bit into the next block, which is good, but it's also a little bit unnecessary because where I shoot deer is I follow the front leg straight up into the body and go for that vital V, and I've measured a bunch of deer on the inside where the entry and exit holes were inside the rib cage, and generally it's like 4 to 5 inches wide at that point. The chest gets narrow as you go forward, so you're going through a little bit of leg meat, but there's not a whole lot of space in between the ribs. So on the outside, you're only looking at about a foot. So the old deer is a foot wide. So I don't need 30 inches of penetration or anything crazy. So I really need, you got 3 inches of leg, then you got about 5 inches of vitals. So you need that really good, wound channel from, like the 0 to 10 inch mark. And it's good that the bullet goes further than that because you want an exit wound, but I don't need crazy damage 20, 30 inches into the gel. So I'm going to test these a little bit further out and see how they perform at, further distances. I'm assuming they'll be good. They are advertised to expand down to 1,500 feet per second. But I don't think they perform as good as the brass version. And unfortunately, these bullets are like $86 for 50 of them, so they're super expensive. So I don't know if I'm going to buy the brass ones anytime soon. I do know that Lehigh Defense is supposed to be coming out with a tipped control chaos and also a tipped, I forget, it's the extreme chaos, I believe. Instead of a bunch of pedals, it's just 4 big ones that are supposed to be more like blades. So I'm waiting for them to come out with those because I really would like to test those along with maybe some of the Hammer HHTs. But again, all these bullets are very pricey and I'm working on a limited budget. So for the meantime, I do have some cutting edge Maximus bullets for the 6.8 SPC to test out next. I'm going to see how they perform. They might be the same as the Hammers, honestly, who knows. But like always, guys, thanks for watching and please like and subscribe.